Good morning, everyone. Here I am one more time, Marlene Gonzalez with Canvas Real Estate. You're probably noticing I don't look like the Section 8 house, but today's class is a really, really important class. More and more, we're seeing the Section 8 vouchers coming about, and I think it's very, very, very important that we explain the process to both tenants and landlords alike, since we're not allowed to discriminate in any way, shape, or form. Okay, so without further ado, let me get started here and start talking about this process. And today I have Yala Rodriguez Cruz from our office and Irelis Aguilar, who are here, and they have worked with both sides of this type of transaction. In other words, they have worked with tenants that have vouchers, and they have also worked with landlords that are either set up with Section 8 or help them get set up with Section 8. Okay, so let's start with a little bit of the terminology that you need to become familiar with. You're going to see a lot of initials in the process. For example, MDHCV. If I see that, I wouldn't know what that is. Well, that is known as the Miami-Dade Housing Choice Voucher. People have vouchers from maybe many years ago, even though on February 5th, they opened up the waiting list, which had not been opened up in a number of years. And that particular waiting list was going to afford 5,000 new people on the waiting list. The issue is, do we have enough properties to accommodate those people? Well, that's the reason why they're in the waiting list in the first place, okay? RTA, request for tenancy approval. There's a approval process that the tenant has to complete in order to get a particular property approved with their voucher. HA, Housing Authority. For example, in Miami-Dade County, you have a housing authority, but Hialeah also has a housing authority, and the city of Homestead has another housing authority. Now, if you have a voucher, for example, from Miami-Dade County, that voucher can be applied to Hialeah or Homestead or anywhere in the county for that matter. Then you have PHA, Public Housing Agency. That's the division within the county or the city that manages the Section 8 program, okay? Then you also have HAP, Housing Assistance Payments Contract. That's the contract, correct me if I'm wrong, Iala, that the landlord signs with the housing authority, okay? So the local vouchers are administered by the Public Housing Agency, okay? Now, the HAP contract is basically an agreement between the Public Housing Authority and the owner of the property occupied by an assisted family. Okay, now a family, from what I understand, can rent any property, but there's also buildings that have an agreement that they will accept Section 8 vouchers or affordable housing. And then maybe later on, as we're explaining, we can discuss what is the difference between a Section 8 voucher and affordable housing units per se, or sometimes they refer to it as tax credit units. Okay, so let's kind of recap what this is all about. So Section 8 is a federally funded program that helps mostly the elderly that are on fixed incomes, for example, low-income families and disabled individuals. It has nothing to do with skin color, race, religion, etc. It only has to do with helping families that can't afford to get into quality housing. And as we all know, we have a rental crisis. Number one, there's a shortage. And number two, rental rates have skyrocketed here in South Florida. So it's making it more and more difficult for people to afford quality housing, okay? It doesn't always pay 100% of the rent. Sometimes if the prospective tenant has a job or their own income, for example, someone that's retired that gets Social Security payments, retirement, maybe it's a pension, they will have a portion of the rent that they have to pay. Usually it's like 30% of their income, but no more than that. And yesterday, in speaking with Iala, preparing for this class, Iala was telling me if the voucher is, let's say, $2,500, okay? Yes, there are vouchers out there for that amount, believe it or not. If the voucher is 2,500, so as long as the rent is not over the 2,500, because if it is, that would make it illegal. But if the person has an income, maybe they end up paying of the 2,500, no more than 30% of their income, and then the voucher kicks in and pays for the other difference. Did I say that correctly? Okay, cool. Now, the housing authority does not pay for deposit. This has to be made by the tenant. Now, the housing authority also does not pay for the last month in advance, but it is included, let's say, in a 12-month period. So eventually the landlord will get that last month. They're just not going to get it upfront. Capiche? Okay. The landlord will not get the first month's rent deposited directly into their account until after the tenant moves in. So keep in mind, if you're setting up a new landlord, correct, Iala?
Yeah.
We got to make sure that the landlord understands that they're not going to get that rent at the walkthrough. They're going to get immediately after that, or once all the paperwork is in order. But then after that, every month on the first of the month, you can count on that payment being sent. Okay, so keep that in mind. If the landlord expects that from day one, it's not going to happen. It's once they're set up in the system. I hope I'm not going too fast, but if anything, you could definitely come back and take this class since we are recording it. And later on today, we will be putting this class on our YouTube channel like we do with all our classes. Canvas Real Estate Miami Lakes on YouTube. Go ahead and subscribe to that channel and you'll be able to see this class and other classes as well. Okay, so here's a few other things that are important to know about Section 8. Section 8 is basically an additional income source. Any property out there can accept Section 8, okay? It's not limited to apartments. Do they accept, I have a question, do they accept Section 8 in mobile homes, or does it usually have to be actual structures?
We haven't seen it.
We have
to be
not
honest.
seen it.
That's a good question.
That's
but
a
we haven't
great
seen it.
question to
Yes.
find out whether or not Section 8,
Even efficiencies.
even efficiencies
neither.
are accepted as well. So keep that in mind. It has to be, let's say, a condo, a townhouse, a villa, a single family
Because
home
they have to comply with all that they require to
Eh,
pass the inspection.
to pass the inspection, because they inspect at the beginning and they inspect every year to make sure that tenant is doing the upkeep and the landlord is doing the upkeep of the property as well. So, maybe you don't represent a tenant at this time, but you do have an investor that's buying properties and they want to buy the property for investment purposes. So maybe Section 8 is a good option, knowing that they're going to get their rent every single month. And the tenant has to take care of the property, because if not, they could actually lose the rights to having their voucher. Now, it is illegal to discriminate against someone's source of income. Okay? Keep that in mind. That's very importante, as they say. Inspections are required before the lease starts and also for each renewal every year. If there is an HOA or a condominium, the inspection cannot be scheduled until after the tenant gets an approval from the HOA or the condominium. Now, background and income check is still required when sending an offer. In some cases, the tenants actually pay a portion of the rent, as we've discussed already, depending on their income. So keep in mind, the tenant is going to pay for security deposits, any application fees, background check, and their portion of the first month's rent. once they do move in. The housing will pay all 12 months. Divided on a monthly basis, obviously. So tenants do not pay for the last month's rent. So the landlord can't say, I want first month, last month, and security. They could request that first month, which is a combination of what Section 8 covers, and if anything, what the tenant's portion is responsible for, and the security, but not the last month. Now, HA, the housing authority sends the direct deposit to landlord from the 1st to the 5th day of each month, though it can take up to 30 days to receive that first deposit. And by the way, that has improved because I did something like that with one of my properties back in 2002, and it took almost 3 months to get that first check. So it has improved incredibly. Now, the rent payment can go directly to the owner or even a management company.
Yeah.
And our commission cannot come out of the security deposit by law. And last but not least, so we do not get in trouble, and you'll notice that it is highlighted in yellow. Do not reach out to a listing agent and ask if they accept Section 8. Or do not answer if you're asked that question, yes or no. You never know if that phone call that is coming in is an inspector from the state of Florida, from the housing authority, okay? Instead, your answer should always be, everyone is welcome to apply.
Yes. All
Period.
applications will be reviewed.
And all applications will be reviewed. In fact, come to think of it, we should add that. And hold on,
Definitely,
and
confirm.
all applications will be reviewed
By landlord. It's-
by landlord. Okay, now, if a landlord IALA is not set up and someone with a Section 8 voucher wants to apply, I know we're gonna go in this at the end, but the process usually will take how long to get a landlord approved?
It could be as long as 1 month if there is no association, because what happens is when you have a condo or you have an HOA, it will take more because the first thing that they will ask you, I'm talking about Section 8, is the approval from the association. Then you need to be really fast with that application, and as soon as you get the approval, then you send the package. There is a landlord package that needs to be filled out, and that's,
And we'll go over
we
that.
always help the landlords to do that. And then you send everything to Section 8, but it's gonna depend from us also, because you need to be following up. Like every 2-3 days, you follow up. But it's very important to be very fast with the application. If there is no application, it could be a month. If you do everything, like always be on top of like you fill out the application, you don't need to be set up. Like you don't need to be a landlord approved, an approved landlord before.
Okay.
Just as soon as you list your property and you receive an offer, that's the moment that that person will bring you the application. It's a package, is what they call the package.
To get the property approved.
Exactly.
And the landlord
then you
approved.
will fill out with the landlord.
Now, that's very
information.
interesting because if you are a landlord that has investment properties and this opportunity is presented to you, and you as a realtor have the knowledge of what it takes to get that landlord approved, I mean, you just took it up a notch because there's added value to your expertise in doing that and saving them the headaches, because it's easier to say, no, I don't accept Section 8, which there we can get in trouble, okay? Then say, it's easier than what you think, and I'd be more than happy to walk you through the process, and you have it already approved, and then you can continue with the program if it works well, or later, a year from now or 2 years from now, you can rent it to anybody that we publish on the MLS.
But also it's important that in some locations, you will get the most value from Section 8. That I have worked, for example, in Miami Gardens, I have an investor. And he
Okay,
got an apartment, cash deal, and I said, okay, let us list it. The most that I got was from Section 8, like they approved for the 2,400, and no one else offered me that money. Then it's very important to know that also, because we always said about the money, that you're gonna get that money. Anything happen on the market, Section 8 always will pay. But beside that, there is some locations that you will get more value or more rent amount from Section 8. And that could happen with Miami Gardens, Homestead. I had
It's very
another in-
aggressive.
I had one in Kendall that we received for 3,600.
And
from
how much
Section
was,
8,
and how much was the list price, for example?
full price.
Oh, okay,
full
full
price.
price, and other people were making offers less than the
Less, I
asking
got
price.
like 3,400, 3,500, and Section 8 came and said, okay, 3,600. I had another single family in Homestead, and they came and they offered 3,900. And in Miami Gardens, they were the ones that offered the full price because they want to secure the property because they don't have a long time to do everything. Like they have like 2-3 months, they can get renewal for just one time.
Oh, we're gonna get to that. The vouchers expire,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so let's see how this actually works. Does anybody have a question in the room? Hello, somebody needs to be muted. Okay, let's see. Okay, hello. Okay, I gotta find everybody. Is everybody muted, please? We are recording. See what happens on a live show. Okay, okay. So how does this all work? Let's see if we could put it in perspective here for you. So they do a review. Okay, hold on. Let me look at the participants and make sure everybody's on mute. Okay, Odalmis needed to be on mute. Okay, now see, everybody's on mute. Here we go. Okay, so here we go. So they do a review of the tenant's income and investigation of why they need help with rent. We're still talking about the tenant then, right? If approved, they get a voucher with the details of what they qualify for. Depending on tenants' finances, they may qualify for 100% coverage of the rent amount or a portion, and the tenant will be responsible to pay the remaining amount. This is determined by the housing authority, not by the landlord or the tenant directly. Now, does that amount change year by year, Iala?
Yes, it could be reviewed, like they gave you, for example, 2,500, and it will be like 600 the tenant, and the remaining will be Section 8. And also landlords can ask for renewal and increases every year. And also during the year, it just happened to me in Miami Gardens as well, that they started with a breakdown because a voucher said total 2,400, that it breaks in the amount. If the tenant is not covered by 100%, it will say tenant X amount, Section 8 X amount, and that's the total of the amount that they are approving for the contract. Then that could change during the year. You will receive a notice from Section 8 saying that they change because they do review, the income I don't know how
Right.
frequently, but it happens during the year.
Now, when you say during the year, does that review coincide with the expiration of the lease term or not necessarily?
Not necessarily. It happens, like I had that lease since November, and it just happened last month that they review and they change the break. And then the landlord will receive a different amount from Section 8 and a different amount from the tenant, but always will make the total
Of the voucher.
of the voucher and the
That was
total
approved.
that we are in contract for.
Now, let's say the review for the tenant is now in March, but the tenant's lease doesn't expire until July. What happens if they did the yearly review in March, and then when the lease renews, the landlord increases and there's a difference? Can that be adjusted?
It will be adjusted.
Okay.
Usually you should request, you should request a 60-day in advance, like we do any renewals, but we always try to do it maybe 90 days. We used to work a lot with Section 8 tenants where we were managing properties, and we used to have 20 tenants, and it was like they renew, but you can ask for an increase. And but do it with time if you are representing the landlord.
Okay, very well. That's very interesting to know. Okay, so now it's time for them to start the search and find a property they like. Obviously, negotiate the terms with the landlord, and that's why they need us, realtors, to help them in that process. Draft a lease agreement, move-in date, rental amount, et cetera, et cetera. The tenant at that point will request the RTA form, which is request for tenancy approval of that property in particular. Remember, this tenant already has a voucher, and they must submit the RTA before the expiration on line 4 of the voucher. Now, these vouchers, how long do they usually last? For the person to go out there and do their home search?
I've seen vouchers either for 60 days and then they do renewals sometimes for another 30 days,
Yeah,
60
they
days.
can do renewal of the voucher. If they have a voucher like for 90 days and they are not able to find it in that time, they can request an extension for another maybe 30 days and then start, they continues looking for a property.
Now, when they say the tenant can request, does the tenant go online? Do they have a social worker that works with them? How does that work?
Usually they have a person that works with them, it could
Okay.
be social worker. I have seen different names, like in Hialeah assistants, like they usually work with someone, and that's the best way to do it. Because that's the person that going to request extensions, that's the person that going to help them to
In
go
the
through the
process.
process and expedite the process in order for them to get the property. But also, as soon as they apply for a property, they stop that term. And that's important too, for those people.
Oh, okay, so
Because
if,
it's not easy. Section 8 knows that it's not easy for landlords, to accept Section 8, even though you say that the application will be reviewed, then they help them.
yeah, because it's an unknown, so they feel it might be a little bit complicated to do the process, but you as a realtor, when you know the process on both sides, you can facilitate this. And, maybe a lot of people say, I don't work with Section 8, that's not my specialty, but you can bring a value to the table, most definitely, if you know this process for a landlord, and especially a landlord who's an investor that buys a lot of properties, so it's the safe way to go. Okay, so caseworker gives the packet to the tenant and landlord to be filled out. The owner needs to provide documentation as proof that he or she is in fact the owner of the property. So for example, the warranty deed of the property would suffice with that. If the property is in a condo HOA association, one more time, the tenant must apply and get approved first before the next step at the housing authority, and we put this in bold, realtors, very important to find out how long the HOA takes for approval, especially if the tenant is in a hurry to move in.
Yes, because if it's at the end of the expiration of the voucher and you see that the HOA takes like 3-4 weeks, you may need to contact that association and explain them what is happening. And I will always suggest to go in person.
Yes, interesting, when they present it to the HOA or the condo association, they're not privy to the fact that this tenant is a Section 8 voucher. They shouldn't, because the lease doesn't refer to that. It just refers to the conditions under which the property is going to be rented, so on and so forth. Okay, so once the HOA or condo association is approved, inspection gets scheduled. A certified Section 8 inspector, I didn't even know that was a position. A certified Section 8 inspector usually takes anywhere from 2 to 3 days and up to 2 years. Now, depending how busy housing authority is at the time, these types of inspections are not like a traditional inspection. It's more like a walkthrough. Irelis, would you like to tell us what the inspector looks for?
Smoke detectors.
The house has to have smoke detectors, very
Yes.
important.
Yeah, smoke detectors, and what we used to do is we try, we tested all the smoke detector. They go to see if they has hot water. They do an examination of the walls, their examination, the electrical outlets.
Yes.
Yeah, that the wall is not have any kind of
Hazards or anything like that.
or humidity on the walls. and all the outlets. They request, for example, the bathroom and the kitchen have the
To have GFI.
GF5, all outlets, so yeah,
Okay.
they go to that particular
windows,
points.
If they need to have screens, sometimes, you know, if they are impact windows, they check everything, that everything is working properly. It's
Okay.
like you have to prove that the house doesn't have any function issues. They will test the stove, the fridge, everything needs to be
Exactly.
working
Most
fine.
important thing is gonna be appliance, that they have the hot water and smoke detectors and GF5. It's like a more safety, issues that they avoid
look
to the
for,
property. To
yeah.
them.
Things like
Okay. For example, does the property have to have a washer and dryer?
No,
No?
they
No.
have to have, because we have had buildings that have the washer and dryer inside the unit, but we have had buildings that have the washer and dryer in
The
the
common
complex,
areas.
in the common area, so it doesn't have to have it inside.
Okay, yeah, because I know when they, for example, we have Ray Palacios in the house today with First Origin mortgage lenders. When an FHA, they need to make sure that the house has what? A refrigerator? Can you enlighten us with that?
Just basic appliances, not washer dryer, but refrigerator, range, and a sink.
And a sink. It doesn't even have to have a dishwasher or a microwave, for example.
Yep.
Okay, so maybe this is the
The
case
basic-
for
the one.
Section 8 as well, as long as it has a refrigerator and a stove
Yeah.
to
Yep.
cook. Okay, very well. Does an outside stove count?
Has to be-
I had one with an outdoor
Kitchen,
kitchen, and they
uh-huh.
didn't test it. Like,
No,
it's not mandatory.
But there was a stove inside,
Inside, as soon as you
Okay.
have one working, it's fine.
as long as one is working. Yeah, but let's say the house doesn't have a stove, but it has an outside kitchen. That would be
I don't
kind of
think
weird.
so. I
Yeah,
don't
that would be
think that's
considered
the-
a studio efficiency or something. Okay, so let's see what else. Okay, so it's more of a walkthrough of sorts. Let's see what else. Let me tell you, this PowerPoint is very impressive that Ro put
Beautiful,
here, and I
beautiful.
hope Ro is proud of the fact that I'm handling the class as best as I
Beautiful.
can. Somebody wrote a note here. Let's see. Oh, there's Ro, up to 2 weeks. You have a copy of an inspection in one of the emails I sent you. Thank you, Ro. We will definitely open that up. And it helps to send that list to the landlord, so he or she can go over the list and be ready for the inspection in advance.
Yeah.
Well, I like you to know that Iala and Irelis are gonna borrow that.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, for sure. Okay, so now that we know what it entails to get approved and what we should be saying as a realtor or not saying, how do we find these types of properties? You know, people are not out there advertising, we accept Section 8.
And sometimes they don't want to rent it to Section 8, but you as a landlord, as a realtor, depends. If you're representing a tenant,
Uh-huh,
just call those listing agents and convince them why they should accept Section 8. Make your
Right.
case. And if you're representing a landlord, because when I rent that property in Kendall, my client wasn't thinking about Section 8. But then I said, okay, this is the higher offer. You're gonna have money coming in every time on the first of the month, and it have been
and no
happening that-
headaches.
No headaches. There is people, usually they are more steady, like Section 8 doesn't want to be moving every year. Then you will have people for a long time. Then you need to be prepared for those arguments. Yes, you make las expectativas, like from
The
the beginning.
expectations,
The
yes.
expectation, you said, okay, the beginning is gonna be hard. We need to fill out paperwork, we need to prepare for an inspection, but.
But I have the
after-
expertise to do that for
to
you.
help you, I will be there. I will guide you through the process, but as soon as we get approved, you're gonna have your money every month, the highest amount that you can get for the property. And also, you don't need to be thinking about renting your property every year because these people will take long time to move. And I
Right.
think those are the main arguments. It could be more that you can convince either your client, landlord, or when you are calling a listing agent, you talk to them and you said, these people are gonna stay for your client.
Yeah, and think of it this way, especially for an investor, you're not gonna have to put the property back on the market next year repaint, do repairs and pay commissions again, even though it's nice when we get commissions every year, but you're gonna help that landlord, and next thing you know, they buy their next investment property, or someone has or somebody has a property and they're gonna buy another home, and maybe that home that is gonna turn into an investment property, they could put it in the Section 8 voucher program. Okay, Ro raised her hand. That means, okay, Ro.
Hi everyone. Hi everyone. I have
Hi,
2
thank you
minutes
for joining in, my
to say hello.
lovely Ro.
You're doing an amazing job. So sorry, you guys, that I couldn't be there. I wanted to be there. This class, it just takes a lot for the class to understand, but I have so much passion for this class because it will prevent us from getting into trouble. One thing I wanted to say real quick is be careful calling listing agents and asking if they accept Section 8s, because you are going to be part of the oh my goodness, I forgot the word. You're gonna be part of the discrimination process, right? You cannot ask if they accept Section 8, and hopefully they cannot say, if we have one of our agents that is the listing agent, please don't ever say that you cannot accept, or I will talk to the landlord. The wording that I had there, plus what was added, it's beautiful. That's what you need to learn.
Let's review it again. Do not call the listing agent and ask if they accept Section 8, because if not, we become part of the potential discrimination
Exactly.
claim or suit or whatever, or do not answer by saying yes or no. Instead, your answer is everyone is welcome to apply, and all applications will be reviewed by the landlord. That's what your verbiage should be. Ultimately, is the decision of the landlord, but the landlord has that discretion, I guess, at the end of the
Yes.
day, right, Ro?
Yes. So how do you overcome that? How do you let the listing agent know that? You got to send a contract to lease very strong, which you're going to see it next on the PowerPoint. But basically, you letting them know on other terms, you do a special wording that I put there. So that way you let them know that you're using the voucher, but you don't say it verbally. Okay. And I got to go, but you guys are doing
Okay.
a great job.
Good luck on your closing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, love it, Stu. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so let's go back to finding properties. So they ask tenant for packet to review their approved budget per zip code. Why would she have put per zip code? They're only approved in a certain zip code per se? Have you ever approached that? What a shame that we all
no.
had to go. Oh, you're back.
No, I'm here. Okay, per zip code, it's, and what Ayala was saying is that depending on the zip code, sometimes you get more money. It covers more for more house. So they're gonna give you a set of zip code. Let's say that you want to live in Doral, basically you're gonna have more expensive properties than if you go to Miami Gardens. So that's why you're gonna have a variety of zip codes, so you can decide how much you wanted to
How much home they can afford.
exactly.
Got it. That makes a lot of
Yes,
sense.
you see the
Okay,
voucher, and then you check which one
to direct them to.
yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, so have the tenant fill out the report, ask for proof of income and ID. Now, the proof of income is the voucher, copy of the voucher. And if they have a little job or they have social security
Yeah, you
or
said that.
pension coming in, and their ID. Then we do a search by zip code and review pricing.
Mhm.
And Iala, what is this website of affordablehousing.com? Who should go to that site, for example?
Either the landlord to post the property or the tenant to look out for properties, or us. We should check the MLS, our platforms, but also go to Section 8.
So you could approach a landlord directly.
Yes.
And make sure that if you bring forth a willing and able tenant, that the landlord is going to compensate you.
Yeah.
Because in the MLS, we know how much they're going to compensate you, but then you would have to negotiate those terms with affordablehousing.com. So later on, take a screenshot of this, take a picture, check out affordablehousing.com so you could see the properties that are posted there. Because I would assume many a times it's a landlord posting directly.
Yes.
Okay, but that doesn't mean that we as realtors cannot approach those landlords. Okay, then verify if the property owner or condo or HOA has a minimum FICO score requirements in income requirement, and remember to add everyone 18 years or more. Income plus the amount of the voucher. You know, I kind of cringe every time I hear that now condo associations have a minimum FICO score, right, Ray?
And
If you
also
think of it, the
55
FICO
lots.
score is more meant for someone trying to apply for a loan. You know, someone that, in my opinion, and I might be wrong, but in my opinion, someone that is renting a property, it's probably because they can't purchase now or are just not in a position to purchase. So the condo associations and HOA are taking those positions, and to me, they're trying to filter. I don't want to say the word discriminate, but it's like a borderline discrimination. And if somebody doesn't agree, I'm so sorry. That's my personal opinion. I think FICO scores and things of that sort should be left to lenders, not associations. But then it goes back to what I've always said time and time again. That's why associations need to be regulated in the state of Florida. And I know we're moving closer to that because it has to be a fair process for everyone. Okay, everybody should be evaluated at the same level. Okay, that's my rant about associations. So let's go forward from there. Maybe we should have a class just on that alone one day. Okay, ask if they have the deposit amount available. Remember, as we're putting an offer, even though we usually put in the contract to lease that we put the escrow amount in escrow as a deposit upon acceptance. So we got to make sure the person does have that money available, okay, in their bank account or in their savings or whatever, before we move forward. Then
Then show properties.
Excuse me, before, yes, that's the next step, to start showing properties. You know, when you're working with a regular client that doesn't have a voucher, you always confirm if they have 3 months worth of rent and deposits, because the landlord will more than likely request first month, last month security, or we see more and more the first month and 2 months security, for example. Okay, so we got to make sure the people at the very least have 2 months, because it's the security deposit
At least first month security deposit.
at least.
Some
Even
landlords
though the
are-
landlord will get paid their first month, but at what point is that initial deposit they put, is that used by the realtors to get their compensation? How does that work?
Usually, yes, in those cases, the security deposit is the one that we use for commissions, because the first month will be paid by Section A.
Okay.
And if there is no 100% covered, it will be paid by the tenant, but because it's an amount that you don't know exactly when they're gonna get it, it could be after, and usually it's after the moving day. Usually security deposit is the one that is used for commission.
Right, even though security deposit should not be used for commissions. Though,
Interesting.
as far as the lease agreement is concerned, the landlord agrees that that amount is applied towards security deposit.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a fine
So can-
line. Yes,
So I have another minute. So can I just jump into that?
please,
Yeah.
please, tell me
okay.
what's your take on this?
Yes, and I'm gonna explain what I meant on the top of it. So you are, since you don't want to be a part of the discrimination group, you need to treat these clients exactly as you would treat someone that has a job and it has a W-2. That's what I meant on top, where I said that you need to do, if you can go back to where you were, Marlene,
This one here,
the
Section
other,
8 is an additional income source?
no, go back to where you were.
Okay,
What I meant, if you're getting someone approved, no, go back one more. No, go forward, go forward,
okay,
right there. So
okay.
you see where it says to do a tenant report and everything, because you're treating these clients exactly as you would treat any tenant. So you're gonna go to tenants report and do the report and ask for proof of income, because most of them work, it's just that it's not enough for them to pay for housing. Ask for an ID and all of that, just like if you do any regular tenant. When I visit the website, especially for all of you out there that want to take listing, this is a great source to find landlords that don't have the time to deal with it. And since you already know the process, you can actually reach out and try to get some listings from the website. That's how I like to use it. And then the verify the property owner condo that have the minimum FICO credit score. That is that if the landlord has that criteria, he has to have it in writing and not discriminate based on Section 8 or not. If he requires to have, any landlord could have those guidelines as long as it is applied to everyone in general. He could easily say, I want 650 and I want 2 times the amount of rent. As long as those guidelines are applied to everyone, then, he's in compliance with the law. So, when you send a very strong offer, since I'm already here, this is my wording, an additional term. This is how I let the other agent know that I'm using a voucher, right? Because I don't want to discriminate based on me asking, do you accept Section 8? Or I don't want to explain. Now, the deposit, you cannot touch the deposit for commission. That's one of the things you have to explain, both landlord and tenant agent, that or listing agent in this case, if that the commission gets paid once the landlord gets the money from the program, right? If the landlord wants to pay out of pocket, you can negotiate that as a listing agent and have him pay the commission at walkthrough, and then he gets reimbursed for the first month, 30 days, whatever time the first payment gets into their account.
Okay, I was multitasking in the middle of this class, so in other words, you can negotiate this. Can you repeat that again, Ro, with the landlord?
With the landlord, absolutely. So because landlords don't know that, most of them don't know that by law you cannot touch that deposit, then they will probably just say, hey, just get the commission from that. You have to train them, or you have to guide them and let them know that that portion of the money, it's deposit and it cannot be used for commission. However, out of pocket, he could pay commission. He could send the money to Canva. So let's say that the listing agent is Canva, and then Canva pays the other agent. Or the other option will be for both agents, for both companies, to wait until that landlord gets the first deposit into his account from the program, from Section 8, and then he can pay commission then. So the listing agreement as a listing agent has to have some sort of wording as to how we're going to handle the commission part. Yes.
But when you make that very strong and well-written offer you referred to on this slide, does that include that initial deposit from the tenant or not?
Yes, absolutely. On the
Okay.
first page, you are going to say that you have, on line 2 of the contract to lease, you're going to have the amount. Let's say that the amount is 3,000. You're going to have the 3,000, and then on, I think it's like line 3, where you actually
Indicate
explain
where
where
it allocates to. You're gonna put that's gonna allocate as a
deposit.
security deposit, not
Exactly.
towards the first month's rent. I think
Correct.
that's paragraph 7 of the contract to lease, as a matter of fact. Okay, so, I like what you wrote here. So in additional terms, you write tenant using housing authority voucher toward rent payment paid via ACH deposit monthly. Leases contingent on successful inspection. First month ACH deposit may take up to 30 days for landlord to receive. Even if the landlord is already, the property is approved for Section 8 row?
Yes, and the reason why is because depending on when they're moving in, the city doesn't send the money any given day. They only do deposits from the 1st to the 5th. And let's say that you start your rent on the 6th, right? Then you're gonna have to wait until the next billing cycle that they start sending the money. If that's the reason why it might take up to 30 days. Back in your days, in the days that you were talking about, yes, we didn't have control as to how long. Now the city is just more guided in that sense, that now they have, if a contract starts after, let's say, the 5th of the month, then yes, you might get 2 months at one point. You're gonna have to wait, but you're probably gonna get that month plus the following month on the same deposit.
Very well.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Let's keep going forward here. Hold on. Here it is. Okay, how it works, the actual process. So the tenant receives the voucher packet and it's between 15 to 20 pages. That seems like a lot, with details about their budgets and deadline. They find a property and get the offer accepted by the landlord. A lease gets drafted between landlord and tenant. They apply to the condo HOA if required and find out how long it takes. So that's something you should find out ahead of time for the approval. Then the tenant and landlord both fill out their respective pages in the packet. Oh, that's one entire packet, and it applies for both. And it's turned into the caseworker. We should read the entire packet to make sure it is completed correctly. The caseworker reviews the drafted lease and may request changes or ask questions if needed. Then housing authority schedules inspection on the property. This inspection is different than a typical inspection. We talked about that. And the list of items can be downloaded in advance, and Ro provided that, so we'll show it to the group here. After all is approved by the inspector, move-in is authorized, lease is executed, and direct deposit is set up for landlord. That's interesting. It says lease is executed. Typically, you have, if there's an HOA, you have to execute the lease in order to present the application for the HOA, correct?
That's very tricky, okay? Because you're gonna have to kind of have two. The lease, it needs to be approved by the caseworker, right? But it cannot happen before inspection. And so we're doing backwards, because now if there's an association involved, you're gonna have to get an approval from the association first before you even send all the documents. And so that gets tricky, meaning that you're gonna have to have one contract that you send to the HOA signed by landlord and tenant, but then you're gonna have to send the unexecuted contract to the caseworker along with the packet, right? That unfortunately, I don't see any other way around, unless they have another idea, the girls, if they have any other idea how they go around it.
You've had to amend it.
The one that I have with the application, I send it to the application, and then as soon as we got the approval, we send it to Section 8, but then after we had to amend it. Because it's like.
Exactly, that's the only way around, unfortunately.
Right, but when you send it to the caseworker, at that point, is the lease agreement signed?
It was.
Yeah.
It was.
It was signed, but after that, we have to amend it because you have to wait for the inspection to pass. Then they were approved to move in the next day, and that was the day that we consider as an effective.
Yeah. So just think of it like you're gonna have to draft a lease, one for the HOA, and once you are ready to send the packet.
Okay. After all is approved, lease is okay. Schedule a regular walkthrough where tenant exchanges funds for keys. Okay, at the walkthrough. And of course, cashier's check, money orders, right? Like any other rental, for example.
So can I just talk about inspection, right? That's the most important date for the whole process. And that could cause such a delay if your landlord or the listing agent is not ready. So you as a buyer, as a tenant's agent, and if you're dealing with a listing agent that does not know the process, it is your duty to, if you want things to move forward, it is your duty to keep in touch with that listing agent and help them with the process, because inspection day is so critical, to the point that If something so little like a table, like an end table was left in the house, the inspector could take it as if the house is not ready to be inspected because there's still furniture in the house, right? Even though it's just a table that you left there or a chair, depending on the inspector that you dealing with, there is little tiny things that he could turn around and say, no, I cannot approve this inspection. I'll come back later. That later could take anywhere from a couple of days to like if they're too busy, it could take 2-3 weeks for that inspector to come back because he has to go to another inspection after yours. So it's very, very critical. And I emphasize that so much that you as a listing agent or whoever is going to be there at that inspection stays there for the window period that they say. If they tell you we're going to be there from 8 to 12, don't assume that they might get there close to 12 and be there late because they're not going to wait. They're just going to turn around and go, and then you're going to have to wait for the reschedule, which it might happen in a couple of weeks. So I emphasize that so much because to me, that's the most important day of the whole process.
Try to be there. If you're representing a tenant or a landlord, always try to be there and get the phone from the inspector.
They
it-
normally call you and text you because it happened with me before. They call you and text you, hey, I'm gonna be there the next 45 minutes, just to let you know. So you get a phone call from them, but you have to stay there,
should be
as
there.
Rose said, like since 8 in the morning, even if you have to wait until 12.
Mhm.
And you got a nice one.
Yeah.
Normally they don't text. They
Yeah.
just, they just give you a window, but some of them are nice, some are just too in a hurry that they're just like, okay, if they tell you 8 to 11, you make sure that you're there on that window period
100%.
and make sure that everything on that list the landlord has taken care of, so it could be a smooth inspection and get the approval.
And be nice. Don't be the.
Yes, super nice.
Be
Get some
nice.
water. Offer them some water or something.
Yeah.
Bring cafecito.
Talk to them. Do you have too much work today? How many inspections you have to do? So just like you care about them and try to establish communication and there you're gonna be that it's so easy and they even don't look at
them
things that you
important.
think that is gonna look. I'm concerned about the small detectors. I'm trying all of them and he even don't touch it.
Right. You said something about a table, so Section A will not allow somebody to rent a property that is furnished, for example. It has to be completely vacant.
Not in my experience, but you have to put it in the contract.
You
Okay.
have to put on the contract. That's the key. If says furnished, then that's how he's gonna treat it. But if the contract says unfurnished and you have things left in there, let's say the landlord has furnitures and things that he needs to get out, an inspector could just walk out and say this house is not ready for inspection.
Hmm,
It has happened.
got it. Okay.
And the other things, sorry,
Yes.
that we recommend to the landlord, because this is, we're gonna help her on the first time, but we advise that they're gonna have an annual reinspection. The section is gonna go every year to the property to check the condition of the property. And, is you fail the inspection, you can, terminate the contract that they have with you and don't do the renewal because the condition of the property. So the landlord have to keep the property and the condition for
Yes.
annual reinspection.
Yes, and you know what's really interesting about that, because there's been a perception that people that have Section 8 vouchers are not gonna take care of the property. On the contrary, they're gonna take care of that property because they don't wanna lose their vouchers, okay? And on the other side of it is that the landlord is required to do upkeep, so the housing authority is not gonna deal with, should I say slumlords? I know that's a bad lingo, but it does exist. So it's a reassurance for both sides. Okay, so here are some tips to get your offer accepted. You can offer a higher rent, so as long as the voucher supports it, okay? So maybe if the voucher is 2,500, you could look for a property no more than 2,400 because we know that you could go as high as 2,500.
Actually, Marlena, you know that you can go back. And the reason why I put that, and I'm glad that you're emphasizing on it, it's because the way the city knows how the crisis, the inventory we have, right? So you could actually put a higher rent and then go back to the caseworker and talk to them. Sometimes you could actually get, based on the market conditions, you could actually get maybe that voucher for them to raise it a little higher.
Yeah, that's.
In order to secure a
Yes, but
property.
as soon as you get that approval, if you ask for an increase and you get that approval, but you never, because there is a misconception that the voucher is for 25 and then you can offer 28 because the remaining will be paid by the tenant. And that's illegal. That's illegal. You only can offer what the voucher says.
And it's on the half
And if
contract.
you can do what Rosie say, you go back, you ask for more, but you never can offer more than you're approved for, the total amount.
Right. Right. You know, it's interesting. We see all these rental buildings going up left and right. And we're slated to have, I think, another 44,000 units to be built. And the rental communities need to fill up. You would think that they would want to work with Section 8 vouchers to facilitate housing. I know some buildings have been approved as tax credit buildings where people that can aspire to affordable housing, but not as much for Section 8. I've run across buildings that are willing to consider, but then they put the application approval standards so high that the people from Section 8, they say that they have to earn 2.5 times the amount between the voucher and whatever they get, or 3 times the amount. Like somebody going to a rental community, not Section 8, they usually require that the person make 3 times the amount in order to afford to live in a rental community.
Will never be a Section 8.
Sometimes it's 2.5, but the Section 8 individual that has a voucher will never have that sort of income. So it's an oxymoron because they have the money to pay, but they're putting this standard and it's an obstacle for them to get approved.
Believe
Just-
it or not, rental communities will take that in consideration. And you can work, and it could happen that you could rent in a rental community as long as the voucher covers the amount. They will take that in consideration and not go by the three times the rent.
Or 2.5
Correct.
times the rent. So there you go. Okay, so let's come back here to a larger security deposit. So it's okay if a landlord does request a higher security deposit than normal?
No.
It's not, but you as a tenant, if you have it, you could, to make the offer stronger, offer
Got it.
2 months security deposit.
Exactly. But when you say it's like a 2 months, but in the same amount, you never ask if the rent is gonna be 2,400, ask for a 2,800 security deposit.
What you're saying is maybe offer an additional month of security
Exactly.
deposit to make the offer strong. So as long as the tenant has it, and
Correct.
it puts them in a good position for the landlord to accept them.
Yes. Because
Um,
remember,
let-
it's so hard to get these offers accepted. So you have to be, you have to send a very strong offer.
Definitely. Okay. Letter of recommendation from current landlord and friends. So that's accepted. I heard at some point that when somebody is trying to make an offer for a purchase of a home as opposed to renting, that's something that is not seen in good light.
It's a different concept. It's not a love letter. Letter of recommendation is different than a love letter. Love letter is like you say, my client is my buyer is a Cuban and he would love to be close to the
Mom's
Palacio de
house,
los
family
Ojos, and that is a love letter. This is a letter of recommendation from your previous landlord that you pay on time, that that's different.
Okay, very well. No, I saw friends, so I didn't know what it was referring to. So a letter of recommendation from a prior landlord
That would
will
be good.
carry a lot of weight.
Yeah.
So of course, you include all background check, income verification, pay stubs, bank statements, and of course, we as realtors always look at the broker remarks, right? To see what the
Yeah.
landlord is requesting aside from tenant reports. And we mentioned tenant reports here at our company. We use a third-party provider, tenantreports.com, that does a complete credit check, national eviction check, and background check on the individual. And that's what we present to the landlord for the landlord to be able to make their decision if they accept that tenant or not. I know other companies use like the rent spree and things
Yeah.
like that. But that's all part of that process. And I jokingly say we go to broker remarks. Not everybody goes to broker remarks, but here at Canvas Real Estate, we do to see what the requirements of the landlord is.
And
On
it's,
number five, Marlene, on number five, what I meant by that is that a lot of the tenants also think that that he's renting to a couple and then there's gonna be 10 people living in a 3-bedroom. Do know that as per law, it cannot be more than two person per bedroom, right? So, and a lot of the landlords, by you just mentioning this is a family of 4 on a 2-bedroom apartment, then that gives a peace of mind if you mention that it's not going to be no more than 2 people per room, and that is per bedroom, and that is by law.
Okay, question. What if it's a 1-bedroom, it's a young couple and they just had a baby? Are they allowed to rent a 1-bedroom in that case, having a voucher? Isn't that a
I
great
think that
question?
depends
Usually
the
Section 8 will
association.
give them for 2-bedroom.
Yes,
We'll give them for
unfortunately
2
you can. And the HOA, most of the HOAs will not allow you either
Exactly.
to
They are
rent,
only
even if
giving
it's it
associations.
happens to one of my colleagues at the route, someone that works for us. She had a baby. She has a baby and she went and tried to rent a 1-bedroom apartment and the baby was 2 months old and they told her absolutely not. That is, she needed a 2-bedroom as per law.
Yeah.
Some
I have
of
one
the-
that
some
it
of
says
the
even if they are
association-
pregnant, they will say no.
They will say no.
No, 1-bedroom, 2 people.
Yeah.
Got it,
And
got it.
Section 8 will give you a voucher for more, for 2-bedroom.
Yeah.
Okay, because there's a child, okay.
It's
Uh,
actually beneficial for the tenants to have a child because then you will
Be
get a
able to apply
2-bedroom.
for that
Validation.
2-bedroom. Okay, so we can educate the listing agent and the landlord and show that your expertise and understanding of the process will make it obviously much easier for them and help the listing agent and the landlord and the tenant with the whole process. Okay, so in that process, you might gain a new client that says, wow, I'm gonna do this for all my properties. Inspection day. Here's the famous inspection day. The checklist inspector uses can be downloaded as it is available online. Barrow, I think you sent that to us, so we'll show it to the group before we finish. We do a pre-walkthrough following the checklist and check for any detail that the inspector may deny during the inspection of the home. We talked about, for example, the furniture, smoke detectors, et cetera, have the owner fixed ahead of time and before the inspector date, okay. Their window schedule is pretty extensive. They may say 8 to 2. So it's important to be there no matter what during that time frame. They won't use a lockbox or Supra to access the property. Even more so. So make sure there's not a single piece of furniture in the property as they will not do inspection unless the property is in move-in condition ready. Make sure each utility is on before the inspector gets there. Okay, so the electricity, water has to be working, et cetera, et cetera. All appliances must be working. No missing wall outlet covers or cracked tiles. Pool must have covering or safety gate installed. If the inspection does not pass, it gets rescheduled. It will delay the process even more so.
Unless the girls have encountered something different lately, those are my recommendations to make sure that the inspection passes. So if they have anything to add to it, I'm open to change
Pretty
the
much it,
PowerPoint.
Pretty much what it
No,
happened,
yeah.
yes.
Okay, now pros and cons for the landlord. The owner gets approved only once, but each property is individually approved. Can you elaborate on that, Ro?
Yes. So when you send all the paperwork and let's say that a landlord has 3, 4, 5 properties, then you just get, once it's approved, like the account and everything, especially if you have those properties on the same account unless you have different names for each property. Okay, but even if it's the same landlord, each property gets approved, inspected individually. That's what I mean. It goes along with the inspection.
Oh, okay, but when you say the owner, to have them set up to receive direct deposits and all that stuff. Okay,
They can only do it once.
right. Okay, the program pays fair market value for the property's rent.
Mhm.
So it has nothing to do with the voucher. It has to do what the fair market value is for
And
that
they also
area.
review that every year, I have seen, I don't know, in Rose experience that they always review
And
that.
they've been
Yes.
incrementing,
Yeah.
I know
Oh, yeah.
someone that the voucher was very, very low. She was in an affordable housing building. And she was using her voucher, and if they didn't increase it, she was gonna have to move out. So the expense of moving out, a new deposit, so on and so forth, and they reevaluated and they increased the voucher for the 2-bedroom. I
So,
think 2,500.
Number two, Marlene, I can elaborate on that. What I
Yes.
meant by that is that us as an agent, we go to the MLS to look for comps, right? The caseworker is not gonna go by our comps. They go by the website of the fair market value to approve an amount or not. Okay, so that means that if a landlord has a property that it's listed at 3,500, but their fair market value shows that that property should be at 25 or 2,700, then they're gonna go by the fair market value than our comps. That's what I meant by that.
Okay, and what you said earlier, Iala, lower turnover because a Section 8 tenant with their voucher usually will stay in a property 5 to 8 years.
Yeah.
So less turnover. Government direct deposit, they usually pay at least 70% of the rental amount, in some cases 100%. No chasing tenants around to get the rental payment. Very important, and no 3-day notices and things of that nature. Okay, endless, and for example, if the tenant has to pay that 30%, if the tenant fails to do that timely, they could lose their voucher.
Yes, and they
Yes.
pay, I have one that had that issue. She always pay late, but she always pay the late fee.
The late fee.
And my
Yeah.
client is very happy.
Oh,
But
okay,
if they don't pay, they will lose their
voucher altogether.
But you always should communicate with Section 8 and let them know. Because then that will, if you need to put a 3-day notice that you can.
Yeah.
They
Okay.
know in advance what is happening with this person.
Okay, great.
I think that when you're gonna send a notification, you should send a notification for the tenant and from Section 8, so Section 8 knows what's going on. Even in the HAP contract, it's specified that the landlord can evict the tenant if they don't pay the portion that belongs to the tenant. So you can do an eviction process, the only that the HAP contract request is that you do it by the court, and all the eviction process is done in the
We're
court.
talking more from the management side.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that can occur. Okay.
Mm.
Okay, so endless demand because a huge waiting list. I don't know how long that waiting list is. Have you found, Iala and Irelis, the housing authority for Miami-Dade County is quicker, more receptive, have more properties versus Hialeah versus Homestead? What has been your experience overall?
I
I have been
worked
working
with
more in Miami-Dade more
But
than.
Homestead was amazing, in my experience, the
Yeah.
last that I had, it was quicker Homestead and I have an HOA than downtown.
That one that
And I
is
had
in
one with
downtown.
Hialeah that it was super good as well, and, but that's when you are in the process, you are asking, no, for the approval for new Section 8s. Because the Section 8 takes here in Miami could take like years.
No, and they just opened up that list, but to get it approved, once that person has that voucher, have you found it more easy to deal at the county level or the city level? I know I'm putting you on a spot here, but,
City level, but it depends also the person that is in the other side.
right.
Yes, and how they are handling.
And you have to always
Exactly.
deal with the caseworker that is,
Yeah,
is,
we always trying to find that person or customer service, or as soon as you put more people in the loop, you will get a better response.
Okay, got it. Okay, so endless demand because a huge waiting list. Basic economics say low supply and high demand, higher prices, and only about 30% of landlords get their properties ready for Section 8 rentals. So, landlords that have multiple properties, Section 8 is a great alternative. They're approved once, and then they could start adding their individual properties. Dealing with professional tenants, they know all the ins and out of the Tenant Landlord Act better than us. Ro, what were you trying to say there?
Where are you? I'm sorry.
Number 6, dealing with professional tenants, they know all the ins and outs.
Oh, yeah. So
Okay,
that's the cons for a landlord, right?
okay,
These tenants, they know the law better than landlords, better than us. So that's what I meant, dealing with professional tenants, that if the landlord doesn't go and fix what needs to be fixed, they will report the landlord and try to get rent-free or a deposit and things like that, because they know the law, they know the inside and out of the
yeah,
of the guidelines.
and the Landlord Tenant Act is a little bit one-sided. It's biased for the tenant
Yeah.
more than the landlord, because they don't have control over their properties, obviously. Okay, it is hard to evict a Section 8 tenant. Process takes longer than usual. They even get a paid lawyer to defend their case.
And that's
Anybody
for the
wanna-
same reason. It's for the
Yeah.
same reason, because they know the law and they know how to get around it. And so it might be a hard eviction, especially if there's a child involved or if there is a elderly and things like that.
Okay, okay, this
But
part,
you can evict it.
but you
for
can,
sure.
you
You-
can.
You
Yes,
can do it.
absolutely, you can. Yes.
Which, if you think of it, it doesn't make sense, because if Section 8 is paying for most of their rent, and all they're having to come up with, if any, is 30%.
Right, that-
Excuse me?
They pay late sometimes.
And they pay late and pay the late fee and all that, it would behoove you to think that they don't want to lose it. Yes, Ray? The
Yeah.
landlord has to at least collect that 30%. But if that's all, I wish my, my mortgage would allow me to just pay 30%, you know? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so this last slide here was a little bit more towards getting a landlord approved. You wanna enlighten us here, Iala, as to the, I copied this verbatim from your email yesterday. So let's say you're talking about a landlord that is not approved with Section 8, or just an offer in general?
In general, because some of them are not approved. It's just that you receive the offer, maybe it's your higher offer, then you just review it. And everything that we put it before, like you check that person as any applicant. Like you're gonna check everything, and then you may contact the person that is assisting that tenant and see, how is everything going with that process. But it's like you're starting from zero. You need to review the offer, review the package, fill out the package, explain to the landlord the pros and cons, and make sure that you work together with the person that is bringing the tenant as a team. If you work since the beginning and you follow up everything, you get things done faster. That's the
Okay.
person, but that question that is, they have to be approved. No, you can get the offer at the same moment. You can fill out the package and get your landlord, your client, if you're representing the landlord side, approved. You don't have to have that person or property approved before
Ahead of
you
time.
receive that offer.
So in other words, it can be done simultaneously.
same-
They're getting the
exactly.
landlord approved with Section 8, and at the same time, they're getting the property approved.
But if you have an HOA, you
Yeah.
can't submit anything until you have the HOA approval.
Of course.
Then as soon as you have, just make sure if you are dealing with an association, condo, or single family in a community, you have to get that approval, and then you submit the approval, the package, and then you submit the contract. But the package is simple, it's just information and personal information. If it's a personal, it's a corporation, you're gonna need to submit paperwork, with
Yeah.
and also you have to put a bank authorization form. Sometimes they allow you to send it via email, but most of the time they will need to go, the landlords, and sign in person, like the security deposit authorization. Then they will need to give bank information. But it's mostly like the property, the records, the person, the social security, and the bank information. Then you submit everything, and just make sure you go page by page.
And
of
all the
package,
fields are
and
completely
make
filled
sure
out.
you, all the signature, all the initials, it's a detailed work, as always, as our work it is always. You need to make sure that everything is complete, is executed, then you send it to Section A, and it will take maybe 2-3 days if you are in top to get a response from that person that is in charge of that voucher, and then you get, okay, it's okay, or you need to fill out more information, or you're missing here, or this is wrong. And then after you get that approved, you can like schedule the inspection. And once you get the inspection, you pass the inspection, then tenants are ready to move in. But then you need to wait, maybe if they move in, is the 5 or the 6 or the 7, you need to explain your landlord since the beginning that they will probably get, of course, if
Payment.
after the first, they will get the rent the next month, but they will get, for example, if it's January 5th, they will get in February, January plus February, because rent is paying advance.
Right, right. Now, something came to mind. You wanted to say
Yeah,
something?
I wanted to say
Lelis?
regarding the landlord. For example, I know that some cities are different. For Miami, they have a website that is mdvouchers.com, when you can start, if you're planning as a landlord to rent to Section 8 tenant, you can start doing the new vendor package. So they, even when you have to wait for the association approval to get the tenant package, to get the property, you can start doing your new vendor, application to get approved.
As
So-
a landlord.
As a landlord, because sometimes they are ready, they review all the application, and they say your application is on hold because the landlord hasn't been approved yet. So in order to do a process as quick as possible, you should, from the beginning, if you're planning to rent Section 8, even if you don't get the association approved or anything happen, and you're gonna go to another Section 8 tenant, you should be first as a landlord approved by
Ahead of
Section
time.
8.
Now,
Exactly.
question, as a listing agent, you get a property, and I've seen sometimes that they put on remarks or broker remarks, accept Section 8 or Section 8 approved. Are we allowed to say that on the MLS?
We shouldn't, like, if you're not discriminating, what you are emphasizing.
Oh, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Yes.
And you could feel free to report those agents that they put on remarks. Even on broker's remark, you cannot mention the word Section 8.
Yeah, whatsoever. I think they're misrepresenting, because maybe what they mean is that the landlord is set up as a vendor with Section 8, not that they will accept Section 8. It's,
Because that property has a previous Section 8 tenant and they already approved as a
But
landlord for
that would
Section
be
8.
careful. Maybe that's a good question, that you have, which wording we should use to attract Section 8, but I think that in general, just to put like all application, like your regular broker remarks.
Yeah.
You shouldn't mention nothing related with
no, but we
Section
do
8.
see it time and time again. Isn't that a great question for Ask an Attorney
Yes,
next
like if we
week?
can put like Section 8 approve or
Or
landlord.
like this property has been is sped and approved. I don't know, Roy, is that say
The
like the
property or
has
the-
been-
It's just that the moment that you mention any wording about the Section 8, you are in the team of discrimination. You are participating. So
I brought
I
it
will
up because
suggest,
I've seen it, and I don't know when you've done Section 8, well, when you've rented properties,
I
you
never-
don't mention
no.
Section 8 at all.
No, I don't mention.
So the word of the day is, we don't mention Section 8. We have to treat any
Everyone
tenant
is welcome.
everyone is welcome to apply. And all applications will be reviewed.
so that gave me an idea of what Ayala's just say now. Maybe on broker's remark, we can say, quote unquote, everyone is welcome to apply. So that way you're giving me the hint that, if I have a Section 8 client, perhaps if we're the listing agent, everyone is welcome to apply. I don't think we're breaking any rules there from
Just because
We'll be happy to
sometimes-
present your offer to the landlord.
Sometimes you have beautiful
Any and
properties
all
and
of it.
Section A say, okay, no, that one, they won't accept us without even asking.
Right.
And then if you put a word in saying everyone is welcome to apply, you give that hint of the, okay, come here.
I
because
love that
they
idea.
say,
Yep.
Sometimes they say, no, that one is too beautiful. No, they wanna sell me. Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with how beautiful the property is, obviously. It's the fair market value. Okay, and last but not least, obviously, landlords need to stay on top of their property maintenance.
Yes. Yeah.
They check the property every few months landlords should check their property every few months to make sure everything is in good, clean condition. Especially if it's an absentee owner that doesn't live here, you would assume that they have somebody taking care of the property.
Yeah.
One of our agents had an experience like that, and the landlord and no one went to the property for over a year, and after they moved out, something happened and the property wasn't necessarily being used for residential purposes.
Oh, my God.
Okay?
I think if you
So-
want to go beyond in your service, like you finish your rental and that's it. I think that this would be good, like in a couple of months, you write to your landlord and said, okay, make sure you inspect the property, make sure, that will keep you a good, relation, a follow-up, tips for your client, that will say.
Well, and if it's an
Yeah.
absentee owner, you can offer your services to do the property management for them, obviously.
This is a beautiful way to do it.
Yes. Okay, when it's time for inspection, make sure the property is showing ready and vacant as it will fail inspection. We've talked about that. Any furniture as it will be considered not in moving conditions ready. When screening tenants, make sure to call previous landlords, look at rent history, etc. So aside from what tenant reports or rentspree.com does in terms of background screening, it's okay that you do this extra step of getting references from the landlord if they don't provide something
That's good.
in the past.
No, because, I have here with me like a HAP contract that is even when you have a lease agreement with the tenant, you have to sign a HAP contract with Section 8.
By the way, she calls it HAP contract. For those of us that do not know what a HAP contract is, that's HAP contract, so Housing Assistance Payments Contract. HAP, okay?
Okay, bueno, that HAP contract established that the screening is gonna be owner responsibility, because he said that Section A has not liability or responsibility to the owner for not do like a screening
And
to
that's
the
support the
tenant.
idea that you're treating them like any regular tenant.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm so glad that you guys are pointing that out because it's so important to know that it's not, people
Yeah.
might say, oh, it's Section A. If the city approved, that means that they're a-okay tenant. No, that is not the city's responsibility because they don't go based on credit check or background check in that nature. It's just the needs of every tenant. It is the landlord's responsibility to make sure that everything else complies with what the guidelines that he wants, meaning that if they want a certain requirements, then it's his job to do the credit check and the talking to the landlord prior, just like you would do with any regular tenant.
Okay, and then I think this is last but not least, every year the lease gets renewed and the same tenant makes sure to increase the rent at least 60 to 100 days prior to renew time, or you mean the
What-
landlord?
No, that's what I mean, because these are tips for the landlords, right? I'm
Oh,
just
okay,
giving this a tip for the land.
You're
So
right.
if you are going to increase the rent, do not wait until the renewal time because the city is not going to give you or it's not going to consider the amount that you're asking for to be at the renew time, the increase. You need to start working on it as a landlord prior to getting close to that renewal. That's what I meant.
Isn't there a new law now that if they're gonna increase the rent, it has to be a 60-day minimum notice these days?
Not anymore. Not anymore. That changed.
Not anymore?
And
Oh,
that Miami guidelines, it's gone.
Yeah, so now it's
We're
30
back
days.
to 30 days. Yeah.
we're
Okay.
back to 30 days. Really interesting.
Yeah, but
Interesting.
the issue with Section 8 is that do all the paperwork in advance for the renewal, so you have to do your increase request in advance, like
Another
a
Exactly.
90 days between, like a several, between 60 or 20 days in
Yep.
advance, so you cannot. The question is, normally, you used to send comparables of the market when you're gonna request an increase, or you do they to do the work?
No, they do. You do. You do send everything that's going to help you as a landlord, correct?
Yeah.
You're going to send everything that helps you to make sure that the city sees that the area where you're at can be increased at a certain amount, and that's going to help you.
It's another moment to keep contact with the landlord if you are not managing the property.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay, you said, Irelis, that you sent me something that you want me to show the group, the application or something
No,
like
it
that?
was
No.
wrote the
Oh, it
list
was
of.
me. It was me. And
Yeah.
while
Oh,
you
wait a
find
minute.
it, while you
Okay.
find that, it's important for everyone to know that yes, we are afraid because you're afraid of what you don't know, right? Once you do your first, then you'll know that this is a niche in our career that could be very, very good. Once you know how to manage landlords and tenants, this is amazing because the competition as a realtor is very minimum. Everybody says no, even if they don't say it in words, they're afraid of the process. So the moment that you get good, like these two ladies that you have there, that's it. You're making that money like coming every, and you could actually negotiate with your landlord to get a renewal, just like a regular landlord. You be like, okay, I'll take care of the paperwork, and then I just need a renewal every year. There is a gentleman that I know, a colleague of us from another company, that all he does is Section 8 renewals because he works it out with the landlord and he helps him throughout the process and he gets that payment every year of renewal. And what do we say before that? Normally those tenants, it takes them from 4 to 7 years to move because they don't want to, the process is really hard for the Section 8 tenants. So they don't want to be moving every year. So you have a repetitive tenant for years to come. And if you negotiate that listing agreement with the landlord the correct way, you will be getting paid every year.
Right. Ro, thank you for sending all these attachments, by the way. And with your permission, I'd like to share it with the individuals
Absolutely.
that were here
You,
in the course today.
Yeah.
And, for example, the frequently asked questions.
yeah, you're not going to have time to go through all of it, but I
Oh,
will
of course not.
suggest for
But
everyone.
here's what the voucher looks like. And then line 4 is date extension, or line 3, date voucher expires, right?
Yep.
So that's something that we have to look at when we see their actual voucher. So very, very good email with all this information you have shared with us. And here's that famous HAP contract.
Yes.
There's the HAP contract that you were looking, and she's looking at it, and it's like she's reviewing this like an attorney does, okay? And then tenancy addendum for Section 8. Let's see what this is really quickly before we wrap up. So this is an addendum that gives the do's and don'ts, I think, to the tenant,
Exactly,
correct? For as maintenance, termination, so on and
Yes.
so forth. Okay, so it's good to be familiar, but that realtor that you were talking about, Ro, that has a niche market, that's like any other niche. Like if you work with military people, if you work
Absolutely.
with seniors, that's like to get a designation. And here's that HUD inspection checklist that you talked about that they are going to look at when they come and inspect the property.
That gives the landlord a great idea of what to look for, so to be ready for the inspection. For example, the reason I believe it's such a strong niche is because look at Ayala and what she and who else, they work together, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Irelis,
Okay.
yes.
Fidelis. Okay, so they go and look for the investor. The investor purchased the property from them. Then they take care of the landlord. They put the property on the rent for it. And so it's an ongoing business here, you guys. It's an ongoing business that will be good for years to come if you create that relationship with that landlord, that buyer becomes your landlord, becomes your seller, and you get the point.
Definitely, definitely. Oh my God, this was a great class, I have to admit. Come on in, ladies, so they can see you here in the camera. Here's, hold on.
Beautiful ladies, beautiful
Here
ladies.
is Iala. And here is Irelis, the Section 8 experts of the Canvas Real Estate
Sorry,
Office in
sorry, I
Miami
can't show
Beach.
my face. I'm in the bathroom of Lenar's
I know you're hard at work. You woke up at 4 in the morning to drive to Orlando. What we do for our clients.
Nuestra teacher.
Exactly.
So again, if you're working with investors, this is a great source of income for them, and our in-house lender can get them the financing for these types of properties. And then you bring to the table to bring Section 8 clients, okay? Well, that's all for today. I'm super duper excited. This was a great class. I even learned a bunch of things. So we're going to post this later on the email to everyone in the office. We're going to share with the individuals that are connected here online these attachments. I'm going to take a screenshot to make sure that I don't miss anybody that was in the group. I know we had more people at the beginning. People are dropping off, but I do remember the other people that were connected, okay? Until next week, what do we have lined up for next week? Oh, the Canvas Marketing Center. So we're gonna pick 1 or 2 listings from the office, and we're gonna go ahead and showcase everything that we offer with our tech and the branding of the marketing center. Until next week, ciao, ciao.